In the last episode, we defeated Vernakis and Mentana, and we are now free to explore Varla's district. However, most of the content here is side content, which I'll go over in later episodes. To advance the main story, we need to get to a location called the Slums. There are two ways to get here, and the way I'm about to show you is the way everyone should go if they don't have smithing over level 30. Going this way allows us to discover two areas that have some significant stuff in it. The first location we'll arrive at is the Chestnut Stables. The other location is the Temple of Buro. Most of the enemies you'll come across here in this deserted wasteland will be old Elysian Order members and Varla's hound dogs, which act as the wolves of Coldharbour. Here we come up across the Elysian Plaza. You may think that the sleeper right here is Pepe, but be aware as it is not. These Inquisitors will like to summon ancient flame spells on you, so be prepared for that. We also come across a door that seems like it could lead to the Imperial City. However, it's locked. We will be able to obtain the key for this later, but for now we need to keep going forward. Right next to the door of the stables, we can find Melus again.
Why won't he leave us alone? How many times do I have to kill him?
Once you're done speaking to him, head inside the Chestnut Handy stables. You will notice a skeletal horse and a unicorn? Yeah, correct. Talk to Olga the stable master to actually obtain these two conjuration tomes so you can summon these two horses.
Of course.
Behind Olga is a spell tome for the regular horse, so instead of buying it from her, you can steal it from her if you want. However, to get the spell tome for the unicorn, you have to buy it. I will showcase these spell tomes along with any other gear we obtain during this episode near the end, so check out the description for timestamps. If you head on upstairs, you can find Soulless Remains, be sure to take those as well. When you're done with her, head on outside. If you have good eyes, you may have spotted this Tidbella statue out here. This will have Sir Gregory's third note in it. No, don't worry, we didn't miss a note. The second note is on the alternate path I'll show off later in the episode. Let's keep heading forward. We will now come across the Temple of Buro. We have to push on through here to get to the slums. Here we can find a good amount of loot, some lore books, and an Elysian law mage. The law mage will use the same spells that the vampire liches from Act 2 used, and it's basically just a dragon priest fight without the cool mask. Here we can discover the old Temple of the Eight Divines. This is for a side quest, and we will go over this in another walkthrough. Up here we can find another sleeper guarding a locked bossed coffin chest. In these chests you have a good chance of getting amazing loot, so be on the lookout for these coffins with these types of lids. Now, we are finally back on track. We've gotten through the Temple of Buro. We're almost there, so just keep heading forward. We'll now come upon a lake with gigantic plague leeches. If you want to, you can ignore these guys. They won't get hostile until you get very close. However, you should be wary of the water. Many leeches reside in the water, and as soon as you step foot in it, they will become hostile. Up here we can now discover the Slums. We have arrived at the destination we need to be at. Before I walk you guys through the Slums, I will show you the other way on how to get here. Notice that since we went the first way and came back, see I've discovered the Slums, Sir Juncan isn't here anymore. We'll be able to find him again here in this path. If you decide to take this path instead, you need to have over 30 smithing. If you do not, then you'll have to take the other path. Pepe mentions Varla and how he's a threat you should not deal with, so if you want to take his word for it, go ahead. But we'll go over Varla's fort in another episode, as that's actually a side quest. You don't even have to go through the fort to advance the main quest. You can go along this side path here and just take out some of his hounds. Up here, we can discover the Tole village. We will be able to find Sir Gregory's second note here, along with his Dibella statue. We are now about to go under this bridge. Here we can find many plague leeches and 2 sewer entrances. These are both side dungeons, however, so I'll go over those in another walkthrough. This act has a lot of side content here. However, if you want to get a good ending to the mod, doing the side content is very important. Most of the side content will increase your karma, and karma determines what ending you will get to Vigilant. Up here you may notice a gate. I mentioned 30 smithing earlier, and you will need over 30 smithing to fix the broken lever here. We can now activate the lever and head forward. Here we may come across the toughest enemy you'll fight out here, a crestfallen Knight of the Nine. This knight can be tricky, but you can take him out pretty easily at the same time. He has a chance to give you a random Amulet of the Divines, so be sure to loot him if you want one of those. Let's keep heading forward, shall we? We will arrive at our destination of the Slums, however we also have a place we should check out before we enter, the Thrassian Apothecary. If we head on inside, we can find Sir Juncan standing back here. He seems to be following us, and for good reasons. We are also able to find Sir Gregory's 4th note. You may have already noticed the shopkeeper with the plague mask. You can actually buy a full set of the armor off of her in light armor or just clothing. You can also buy an enchanted version of the plague mask, which I'll show you here. If you want to speak to Sir Juncan, go ahead. However, it isn't required as he's surprisingly part of a side quest. Once you're done inside there, we can now head inside of the Slums. I am now going to walk you through the Slums. Most enemies here are just Elysian worshippers, so be aware of that. Also, there is some loot trickled around the area. It's up for you if you want to grab it or not. Now, if you guys are wondering where this door leads to, well, it leads to Coldharbour. However, it will lead us back here, next to the Thrassian Apothecary. This master locked door can be picked, but it acts as a returning point from the dungeon. If you pick it, however, you will be able to skip most of the dungeon, so I really don't suggest doing this as it ruins the whole point of a dungeon, but if you want to, go ahead. No one's stopping you. Here's where we need to go to advance. Climb up the ladder. Up here is the second half of the dungeon, and here is where we'll fight our mini-boss. Same thing goes up here as it was downstairs. Really, the only enemies you'll come across are the Elysian worshippers, and there is some loot trickled around the area. The mini-boss of this dungeon is this guy named the Great Beggar. All he is a mini-boss and a slightly buffed version of a worshipper. You will notice he has a big log as his weapon. If you defeat him, you will be able to loot the log and use it for yourself. Yeah, I never thought I'd use a log as a weapon in Skyrim, but I bet you didn't either. As soon as you defeat him, you will gain karma and obtain the Beggar's key. Like I said, you can search him and gain the Beggar's log, which I will showcase along with the other loot we get from this episode at the end of the video. On this barrel, we can find a forbidden tome that allows us to conjure an ancient flame queen. Now, follow me to find a trapdoor that will allow us to get back to the slums. You will notice this area brings us behind the master locked door. Using the key we got from the beggar, we can open this door, and now we have a quick entrance to the next area we need to head to, Beggar's Way. Beggar's Way can be a little confusing at first, but if you follow this walkthrough, it's cake. When we get up here, we can hear music being played from the lute by this guy named Cadwell. We can also find soulless remains on top of this table here, right next to the cooking pot. Cadwell acts as a merchant and wears a kettle on his head. He sells pretty minor items and doesn't really sell anything unique. However, if you kill him, you will be able to loot his kettle and wear it for yourself. Just a fair warning, killing him will make you lose karma. Behind me here, we see an entrance called Slums Portal. We will be unlocking this later with a key. In this location, we can also find an Anvil of Zenithar, so if you want to craft anything, go on right ahead. Go ahead and keep following me. We are about to come across a weird area. We can see here that there's a big river, and if you look across, Inquisitor Pepe is there waiting for you. Go around this way and speak to him if you'd like. He will basically just harass you for being slow, and you can get a little bit more information off of him.
You're finally here. What kept you so
Now,
long?
we must come down here. If you take a look at this boat, it will allow you to activate it. When you activate it, the boat will start to move. The chain right here will do the same thing. Now, if you want, you can skip this long boat segment just by swimming. However, there is a consequence for this. Plague leeches infest this water, and as soon as you dive in, they will become hostile. Once you get to around this area, you will notice many strange looking creatures. This one isn't hostile, however, this one coming up here is hostile and he will actually attack you, so be prepared. If you want to explore and look around this place, you're welcome to do so, as there are potions laying around and maybe a few secret chests. Go ahead and take them out. We will be coming across these creatures a lot in the next part of the dungeon, and they really don't have anything of importance to loot, so... Now we will come across Cadwell's house. This will lead to the Slums portal we found earlier. If you head down here, we can find Ferryman Amn, which I think is how you pronounce his name. He will have the Ferryman's key on him. This key will allow you to unlock the door to Cadwell's house. Stupid dark young, die. Once you're done killing all these ugly creatures, you can go ahead and use the key to unlock the door to Cadwell's house. This basically acts as like a little shortcut. Now, in order to advance, we must attack this tentacle-looking thing. When you hit it a couple times, it will disappear and it will open a pathway for us. This will allow us to go to the prison tower sewer. Go ahead and go on through it. The prison tower sewers are pretty easy to go through. They do look complicated, however, and a lot of the content in this part of the dungeon counts as side content, so I will go over that in a later episode. If you just want to advance the main quest for now, just follow my character. You don't even have to go all the way down these sewers. Up here, we will come across our first Elysian Knight. These guys can be a pain, they're all decked out in ebony armor, and attack like madmen. Once you loot and defeat him, you can go on through this door and head to the prison tower. The prison tower is going to be tough. There are many strong enemies here, and you might come across your first boss fight of Coldharbour here as well. As you can tell, scamps and Elysian Knights, yeah, they're going to be pretty common here, so just expect it. Now, up these stairs are a caged door. This door is master locked, and with a key we will obtain later, we can unlock it easily. However, if you were to pick this lock, you would skip the entirety of this part of the dungeon and go straight to the boss fight. So if you'd rather do that, no one's stopping you. But for now, for the sake of this walkthrough, I will actually walk you through the dungeon. Up here, we will encounter a Khajiit by the name of Jazan. You can speak to him for some lore information, however, here he will act as a merchant for us. He will sell a few cool unique items. He sells 3 cat rings, 2 of them we've already came across. However, the white cat ring is unique to this shop and one we can only access after we complete the mod. Go ahead and buy it if you want, as the item does have a display in the Dragonborn Museum. Go ahead and go up this ladder to advance. Here we come across a couple of bone crawlers. These guys have a good chance to poison you, so be aware of that. There is also a coffin with boss chest loot back here, so be sure to loot that. In this sort of torture room, on this table over here, we can find an item called the Hide of Abbot Silorn. Go ahead and activate it. This item acts as a consumable, and when you consume it, your stamina will increase. This item also has a display in the Dragonborn Museum. Just like Soulless Remains and the Bones of Uighool, you can find multiples of this item throughout the mod, so you can use every single one if you want, just be sure to save one to the display in the Dragonborn Museum. Now, we continue. Here, we will come across a huge prison block. I suggest saving here, as this part can be pretty confusing to go through. There are a lot of cells, but if you follow me, we will get through this whole place pretty quickly. You will come across a multitude of enemies here, including scamps, Elysian mages, or tormentors, and Elysian knights. Most cells here have minor loot, and maybe a potion or two, but picking almost every cell door, or just opening every cell door to loot them, really isn't worth it. Oh yeah, I should also probably mention you'll come across Elysian knights, so be ready to take them out. If you followed me, you will come across this cell right here. Enter it to keep advancing. It can be a pretty hidden secret passageway that most people have a hard time finding. Watch out for tripwire traps and bear traps, as they are kinda all over the place back here. Also, excuse me walking up to every door. I don't know why I did that when I was recording the footage. Here we come across a master locked gate. You don't need to pick it to advance, but if you want to advance quicker, go right ahead. Instead, follow me. We will eventually end up on the other side of that master lock gate anyways. It'll just take maybe a minute or two. And bam, here it is. Not even a minute. Once we go down these stairs, be aware you may come across a giant knight. Ow. Now, if you've got good ears, you may have heard a skeleton when you walk by this cell. Inside is a skeleton demon. You can find a few of these guys in Coldharbour, but I've actually only seen 2 so far. He isn't a tough enemy to take out. He doesn't really have anything of importance on him either, so there's really nothing cool about him but his look. Tucked back here is a regular coffin, so be sure to loot it if you want. Now, let's advance. When we arrive down here, to our right, we will come across a novice locked door, but if you don't want to lockpick, just go to the left and take out this Elysian worshipper. Here we can come across the other skeleton demon I was talking about. Tucked back here, however, is a boss chest coffin this time, so you can actually get some good loot out of it. Up here we come across a Daedroth sentinel, or a warrior, guarding another boss chest coffin. He really isn't that much of a threat, but be cautious and try to attack him from afar. This Bridge of Death should lead us to our first actual boss in Coldharbour, so be sure to prepare yourself. Now, getting hit by these axes, I'm pretty sure takes a huge chunk out of your health, so how about we do not get hit by them? Once you arrive here, I definitely suggest making a separate save, as it's a good time to do so. Now, when you walk up to his Elysian worshipper, he will get crushed by a huge giant named the Warden. Boss music will commence. I'll give you a few tips on how to defeat this boss. The best way to deal damage to the Warden is to stay afar from him. Using a bow, spells, or anything else ranged will be the best way to survive and not get crushed by his lance. Due to Skyrim and its weird hitboxes, you'll have to aim in between his legs to actually deal damage to him. Refer to the video if you need to see the location where you have to hit. This guy has a good amount of health and can do insane amounts of damage. Other than this, there really isn't much other to worry about. The Warden doesn't have any special or unique moves you really have to worry about. He just has the basic giant attack right here. Once you defeat him, you will gain karma and obtain the Warden's key. Now when you loot him, you can find a good amount of items up for grabs. First off, you can find another piece of Bal that will allow you to summon the Warden when you use the spell. Next up, we have the Warden's helmet. Then finally, we have his lance. These two items are really cool, and like I've said a good amount of times before, I'll go over all special loot we obtain in the video at the end of it. Now that we have the Warden's key, we can unlock a quick route back to the start of the prison tower over at this caged door. Now to actually advance the main quest, we can also use the key to exit out the main door that the Warden was guarding. This will take us to the prison district. I don't know if it's like this for you guys, but when I exited out the door, the sky went from night to daytime. It's a pretty nice touch if it was intended. I'm going to end this walkthrough here. On the next one, I'll go over how to keep progressing the Vigilant main quest, as we are now inside the Imperial City. If you want to look at the item showcases, be sure to stick around, but that is it for the walkthrough part of this video. The skeleton horse and skeleton unicorn are basically the same thing, but the unicorn has, well, a horn on his head. The conjuration spell allows you to summon these guys and use them as a mount for 60 seconds. They both are novice spells too, so these can be a good alternative if you don't have the summon Arvac spell yet. The Thrassian plague clothing or armor, depending on which set you bought, is really cool. The mask is the only thing that has an enchantment on it, however. When you equip it, it will grant you a 50% resistance to disease. Overall, the set looks really cool and the mask resembles a Plague Doctor mask. The armor set, like most ones from Vigilant, however, doesn't have a display in the Dragonborn Museum. The Beggar's Log is a log that acts as a two-handed weapon, specifically a sword. The enchantment reads that it is especially deadly to undead. Now, I never thought I'd be using a log to smash the undead brains of a Draugr, but here I am. The log does have a display in the Dragonborn Museum, and when you equip the log, a weapon art will be active named Sman. This weapon art allows you to swing towards the ground and push away an opponent from your vicinity. This forbidden spell tome that we picked up earlier allows us to summon an ancient flame queen. Now when you summon her, you can hear bells notifying you that this ancient being is nearby. The queen does alright damage, and can be a nice collection to the many conjuration spells you'll receive throughout the mod. Cadwell's Kettle is a heavy helmet that we can obtain by killing Cadwell, an NPC we found earlier. The Kettle has an enchantment that allows you to resist 50% of incoming arrow damage. Makes sense if you think about it, just look at it. The Kettle, despite how cool it kind of looks, does not have a display in the Dragonborn Museum. The White Cat Ring can be obtained from Jazan in the prison tower. There's also another location that we may or may not come across later, but if you want the ring, I'd suggest buying it from this guy. It allows you to take only half damage when falling. This can be useful, maybe it's not. Either way, the ring looks rightfully cool as it's based off the cat rings from Dark Souls. The ring does have a display in the Dragonborn Museum. Here we have both of the Warden's items. First, we have the Warden's Helmet, which is the heavy armor helmet ripped off of the skull from the Warden. When equipped, it will increase your critical chance by 30%. The helmet does look pretty cool, so it makes sense that it's one of the items that can be displayed in a Dragonborn museum. The lance that the Warden was using acts as a two-handed sword, however, take that information as you will. The weapon is pretty big, and due to its enchantment, you will be able to deal bleeding or stamina damage to the unfortunate opponent who has been struck by this. Unlike the Warden's helmet, the Warden's lance doesn't have a display in the Dragonborn museum. The lance also has a weapon art called the Blood Curse Wave. This will allow you to create a shockwave of the Blood Curse to absorb health from a target. This weapon art will cost you 120 magicka to cast. The piece of Bal we obtained by defeating Warden Uighool will allow us to summon him for the price of 287 magicka. For the hefty amount of magic it takes to cast him, I'd say it can be worth it. Having a giant with a huge lance on your side can be beneficial to anyone who's using it.